The Freedom Tunnel is a famous and iconic underground passage beneath Riverside Park in New York City. Originally built in the 1930s as a railway tunnel for the New York Central Railroad, it later became a significant site for graffiti artists and a shelter for homeless people. The tunnel was named after graffiti artist Chris "Freedom" Pape, who created several iconic murals inside it. In this video, we explore the history of this unique tunnel, how it all began. By the late 1980s, graffiti on trains became increasingly difficult due to stricter security and city cleanup efforts. Chris Pape, also known as Freedom, chose the Freedom Tunnel as his personal canvas, where he could work freely without his art being immediately erased. The tunnel, no longer in use for trains, became home to many people and a key location for graffiti culture. Freedom painted extensively in the tunnel, drawing inspiration from both graffiti history and the people living there. His work went beyond simple tags and pieces. He used the tunnel walls to depict social and historical themes. The tunnel not only provided him with a creative refuge, but also allowed him to connect with the homeless community living there. He became fascinated by their stories and began portraying them in his artwork, turning the Freedom Tunnel into a visual document of a hidden society. Chris Pape's work in the tunnel is considered an important chapter in street art history. What graffiti artist wouldn't want their own tunnel to paint in for days, experimenting with different techniques? Freedom created several iconic works in the tunnel, such as his artwork. Freedom to Write, 1980, one of his first pieces in the tunnel featuring a portrait of James Dean. The title referenced both his graffiti, alias Freedom, and a statement about artistic freedom. He used James Dean's image as a symbol of rebellion and individuality, fitting perfectly with graffiti culture. Mona Lisa piece, a graffiti version of Da Vinci's famous painting done on one of the tunnel walls. Unlike the usual wild-style graffiti of the time, Pape created a realistic interpretation, rare in the graffiti scene, especially in 1980. History of Graffiti, 1986, a massive artwork illustrating the evolution of graffiti from early tags to more complex works of later generations. At its peak, over 5,000 people lived in the tunnel. One day, while Freedom was painting, a homeless man walked by. They became friends, and Freedom started sketching and painting portraits of the people living in the tunnel. In 1990, the tunnel was reopened for train use, and all residents were evicted. By 1995, the tunnel was sealed off. However, this did not mark the end of Freedom's work. He created around 40 pieces in the tunnel. 11 years later, he returned and reflected,
"Wow, it's a long time ago." I came out of Riverside Park one day, and I looked down this grating. I noticed other people were looking down the grating, and I thought, I've got to paint something in there. And so I did. I got a picture of the Mona Lisa, which I thought was the most recognizable image of its time, and got a ladder and went to work. And then the next thing you know, I had another idea, and then another, and then I kept going back. I think that, if the paintings hadn't lasted so long, if the body of work had been, let's say, done in 6 months or 1 year's time, and then people came through and went over them, that would be different. But the works had a life. They lived, and it's all you can expect. It is, in the end, it's graffiti. Here's the Mona Lisa. See where the 2 red dots are? That was the beginning of the end to that painting. And that happened in 1990. The painting was done in 1980. Somebody spray painted 2 red dots in the eyes in 1990. And after that, everybody got it.
Stretching about 4.5 kilometers, it is wide enough for multiple train tracks, with ceilings reaching 6 to 8 meters in some areas, making it one of the longest and most well-known underground graffiti galleries in the world. A Reddit user reported in January 2025 that the Freedom Tunnel is likely one of the safest and easiest tunnels to explore in the city, as only diesel trains operate on the tracks. However, security patrols the area regularly. Some of Freedom's works have remarkably survived for nearly 30 years, such as his self-portrait piece. In 2022, an urban explorer stumbled upon it, unaware that it was an original work by Freedom from 1984.
A New York City native. Double reading that, but yeah, super cool, super interesting. Admission, free of charge.
Well thought out.
He's painted a tribute to the old days.
This is you. That was me, yes. I lived in that jacket. That was my Bombardier's jacket. I got that jacket on, I think, my 16th birthday. It's an homage to my jacket. And then the spray can head, of course, was appropriate at the time.
Below ground, Chris Pape may be well known. Up here, he's hardly a household word. Although hundreds of people go within just a few feet of his paintings every single day. If only they knew where to look.
Chris Pape remains active on social media and has created a mini documentary with Vice about the tunnel. If you want to learn more about the 5,000 people who once lived there, the documentary Dark Days is highly recommended. Freedom's story is unique. He was one of the first to do what he did. Every graffiti artist dreams of having a tunnel to practice in, and Freedom took full advantage of the opportunity, creating over 40 artworks. It's great to see that some of his work still exists and that most graffiti writers respect his legacy. If you plan to visit, be careful and bring a flashlight. It can get very dark down there.